Welcome to the third panel in our Cyber Trends 2026 series. I'm Gary Hayslip, Field CISO for Zenity and the Secretary of the Cyber Center of Excellence, or what we call CCOE. We are a San Diego-based nonprofit that mobilizes businesses, academia, and government to grow the regional cyber economy and create a more secure digital community for all. Cybersecurity is everyone's business. The FBI reports a 30% increase in cybercrime complaints across industries over the last couple of years. And the average cost of a U.S. data breach has reached an all-time high of around $10 million, according to the latest IBM threat report. More than half of these costly attacks are aimed at small and medium-sized businesses, which are our region's economic engine. Now pair that with the continued shortage and rapidly changing roles and necessary skill sets of cybersecurity professionals to thwart these attacks, and it becomes mission critical to address this universal risk. The good news is San Diego is leading the charge with more than 1,350 cyber-related firms and the Navy's Information Warfare Systems Command here in our region. This cluster accounts for more than 29,000 jobs and has a total economic impact of $4.3 billion annually, equal to hosting 26 Comic-Cons. This collaborative ecosystem is developing new technologies, defenses, and cyber warriors to combat this ever-evolving threat landscape. So let's tap into our region's robust expertise with our esteemed panel today to talk about current cyber threats, trends, and resources. It's my pleasure to welcome our panel, Blair and Leonard. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys introduce yourselves, talk about your organization and your current role and background. So to begin, Blair, go ahead and kick us off.
Thanks, Gary. And hey, Leonard, nice to see you again. Very excited to join you here today. My name is Blair Canavan. I am based in Kelowna, British Columbia. I've been down to your beautiful city many times, and I arguably say I think I might like it more than any other place in America, but don't tell that to all my friends in Chicago. But my role in a company called Thales, or Thales Group, is I belong to the Cybersecurity Products Division. If you've never heard of Thales, it shouldn't hurt your feelings. Most people pronounce us Thales, or it doesn't matter as long as you call us. My role within the organization spans the globe. I am, in effect, our PQC strategist, manage our technological alliances in this area of expertise. And my background, without going into a lot of, it's over 30, almost 36 years of cyber, much like Gary and Leonard. Between us, I'm sure we all know many of the companies we work for and with. But my goal here is part evangelism in terms of getting ready for PQC and what this means to the enterprise and how this affects everybody. Nobody's immune, and how the ecosystem must come together in real time and is doing so, and why we're so excited. And so I speak regularly on this topic, from the RSA, if you're familiar with that, to large organizations, banks, financials, governments, and so on and so forth. And obviously from San Diego's point of view, very, very much aware of the wonderful work going on down there. And as I said, everybody's going to be talking about PQC and AI in the same sentence. And we'll talk a little bit about that today.
Very cool. Leonard?
Yeah, well, good afternoon, Gary. Good afternoon, Blair. It's great to see you again. And hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with everyone this afternoon. My name is Leonard LeVine. I'm the Executive Director of Cybersecurity and Digital Privacy for the San Diego County Office of Education. I'm representing my boss, our Assistant Superintendent and Chief of Staff, and Chief Information Officer, Terry Loftus, today. So for those of you that might be unfamiliar with SDCOE, we're the County Office of Education serving San Diego County. In addition to operating schools and programs for some of our region's most vulnerable students, we provide services and support for 43 school districts, 126 charter schools, close to 700 schools, actually more than 700 schools, and nearly 500,000 students across the entire county. And so, as you gentlemen know, cybersecurity is a big part of that support. We have a security operations center that heads up those vital functions, protecting our information, our students, our staff, while also detecting and responding to what we see an ever increasing range of cyber threat activities. At SDCOE, we also provide connectivity for internet services to the majority of our schools and districts. So along with that, access to enterprise applications. We're talking about the applications that allow our students to get transported to school, allow us to feed our students, pay our staff, keep our business operations running. So all of those critical school business operations and everything we do to support classroom instruction. Our mission is simple. We recognize that our community depends on our schools. They're the pillars of our community. So we want to help our schools safely leverage technology while protecting students, staff, and the communities that depend on that technology every day.
Very good. Well, I said let's get to it. I got some questions for us, and we'll be able to go ahead and share with our community and everybody listening in. I think the first question, it's going to be around about geopolitical cyber risk as it continues to increase from critical infrastructure being targeted to supply chain vulnerabilities, and then as we've seen recently, some of the sophisticated AI assisted attacks. What cybersecurity threats or shifts are rising fastest on your risk radar, and why are you concerned about them? With that question in mind, I'll start with you first, Leonard.
Yeah. Like every other organization, we're seeing a constant and continuously evolving threat. In our field, K-12, we face unique challenges in that our schools and districts are historically under-resourced and or understaffed when it comes to cybersecurity. Attackers know this, and what we've seen is really a rapid expansion of the threat landscape at large. A significant boom just in the speed, the scale, the impact of traditional threats. I'm talking malware, ransomware, data breaches. And now with AI, we know exploits are being identified just as fast, if not faster, than the vulnerabilities themselves, let alone the fixes and the patches and the updates to follow. So for me, the first concern I mentioned is really the overwhelming threat of attack that our schools and districts are seeing on a regular basis. I'd also mention the risk that we're seeing with identities,
Yeah.
and not just talking about human identities, but also talking about the potential compromise of AI agents, your APIs, those other connections that have access to sensitive information that the organization may not even be aware of. So a second concern is the expanding attack surface and the defender's responsibility to not only protect data at rest and in transit, but also to secure both human and now non-human identities from attackers that are specifically targeting these areas to get around our traditional defenses. So, and then lastly, the risk of AI assisted social engineering. Attackers, their tools that they have access to, they're creating convincing phishing emails, their fake voices, realistic video content. The bar to enter and the skill required is now much lower to conduct sophisticated attacks.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Blair, you want to add to this?
That's a fantastic breakdown. It speaks to Leonard's point that no one's immune, and I think what we're evolving into is conversations about what is critical infrastructure to you versus to someone else. So,
Yeah.
in Leonard's perspective, and I think we all know, without education, where would we be? How do you shut down schools from the outside? And like critical infrastructure is the internet. So I'm always when I hear critical infrastructure, I think our definition of it is traditionally, hydroelectric and transportation and all the industrial IoT that keeps us going everywhere and everywhere. But the internet is the number one concern because guess how that travels. So I think what we're all up against, and it doesn't matter the size or the scope of your business, it's the evolving threat and the sophistication of those exploits that's affecting us all. So often is the case they'll use the lower hanging fruit, which is the ones less protected and the ones most vulnerable, to test these theories and to try these things. And then if they're smart enough and good enough and maybe undetected, they'll take them elsewhere. And so from a post-quantum point of view, which is always my spin, is sorry, I take that, it's not spin, it's my position on that is with AI evolving quickly than all of us can imagine. And you mentioned, Leonard, AI agents. Little did people know that these human identities and non-human identities are all coexisting within one enterprise. Which ones are the most vulnerable, and which ones do I protect against, and how do I prioritize? And so with that comes certificates and digital certificates that are being issued. I just heard yesterday that most organizations, traditionally have, service certificates to as you all know, to run your business. And they've come traditionally from the likes of DigiCert and VeriSign and all these places. But did you also know that when they go to AI agents and AI bomb signings, the number of agents multiplies by 10 to 30x? And when we go to 47-day turnover certificate wise, it's millions upon millions. If you were using a spreadsheet to do this before, it doesn't scale. So automation is required. And how do you automate? So we're using AI to automate, but we're also, here we are with the flip side of the coin, which is AI is turned against us. So I don't want to say all's lost. I think what we're trying to do, though, is to rationalize this down and refine this down to what do you look at? This is the awareness thing. What am I up against? What am I trying to do? And what is the outcome that I expect to get to? I am an optimist, and I believe this is the normal evolution of things. It's just on a hyperspeed path, thanks or no thanks to AI. You don't have a choice. The exploits are more sophisticated because I run it through AI to make it even better. Like it's just anyway. This is the quintessential argument: is AI good or bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on that one too, because I mean, I
Yeah,
work at Zenity where,
right,
we're, an agentic AI security platform, and
right.
we see this a lot, and many of the companies that we're talking to, they're being tasked by their boards. They have to scale, they're moving quickly to go ahead and increase revenue or to be able to compete. Everyone's looking at how to be able to, implement AI, and then agents themselves, they don't I find many times when I talk with peers, when I talk with fellow CISOs, you really got to look at agents as like being digital employees. Many of them
Absolutely.
they have the same credentials, they have the same rights,
Right.
and they have access. And and you have agents that will talk with other agents, and you give them a task, and they take that task, and they'll hand it out, and before you know it, you're connected to you got multiple agents talking to each other, and and you have to have a way to be able to manage those and know that they are actually doing what they've been instructed to do
Mm.
and not going out of bounds and
Yeah.
doing things that, could, possibly get you in trouble, let alone when you bring an attacker, into the mix that's, looking to go ahead and hijack and influence those agents and those outputs and, the data and the different deliverables and stuff that they create. And then, things, like I said, snowballs just roll downhill and things even get worse. Yeah, so I mean, I find what we're seeing today, just the scale and the speed at how fast things are going, is I'm, in my 30 years of being a CIO and a CISO and having been, on the government side, on the military side, and then even in private industry, I've never seen the scale of how quickly technology is changing for what we're seeing today. And even when they say, attacks and threats that are coming, it's no longer, hey, you're going to see this in 2 or 3 years. No, you're seeing this in 2 or 3 months. It's just everything's are happening so fast. And so I definitely I don't despair, but I find that you're continually educating yourself and you can't stop. Things are just shifting so fast. Whether it's on the
Right.
government side, whether it's in industry, it's I don't think anybody is not being impacted by this. So now that we've talked about some bad news, let's talk about some good news. Yeah, I think another question, when you really look at the flip side of this, is all of these emerging technologies and tools and approaches that we're seeing, changes that we're seeing in cybersecurity right now to address, much of this. What are things that you're optimistic about? Blair, I'll let you go ahead and lead off on this one.
Well, it's funny that here we are sitting talking about AI exhaustion, by the way, is a real thing. Uh, for those who are practitioners like you, Gary, or others that are consumers of it, or we're all consumers of it, we all know that, right? part of my time is advocating for it. My other part of my time is, did anyone talk to the people that have to protect against this first? Let them know this was coming. Like those agents, did you know that they required certificate? So I think the good news is that it does inspire and the advent of AI and agentic AI, it does provide us the impetus to fix things and modernize things appropriately. I'm an optimist in thinking that if we're going to embrace this, and let's not get too geopolitical, I'm also on the sidelines watching this battle royale going on about whether these data centers that they're building are going to really help us or hurt us, and how that's going to move us forward into the right realm. If it's for the efficacy of AI being to modernize health sciences, I'm all for it. Let's cure cancer. Let's solve the universe's problems.
Yeah.
But if it's just to have us buy more things and spend more time in the movie theaters and shopping online, I'm not so enthusiastic about that. I think we're overindulged to begin with. But what I say optimistically is that this modernization of infrastructure is long overdue. We've become a bit complacent. In fact, if you drill down a little bit into cryptography, which most people don't know about, certainly boards don't know, it's for the nerds in the basement like us. But if you mention cryptography, their eyes roll, or they go, well, I think I know what that means. But what we're saying is we're now going to rebuild the entire infrastructure of the internet and infrastructure within our enterprises. Leonard's, anyone who's in education knows this, that you have to modernize to keep up, but also to protect yourself against this wave of AI. And I'm positive that the vendor community, Qualcomm right in your backyard, and many others that do all this behind the scenes work, we're working diligently behind the scenes to make sure that as we're building these planes in the sky, that they have landing gear, that they have autonomous capabilities without too much autonomy. I mean, we're building all of this stuff right now. We're rebuilding. I almost to the point where, think of it as earthquake proofing the entire internet. And so you're not going to just slip into, I'm just going to add these new algorithms that I heard about that are post-quantum safe. That's patching. What I'm excited about is that we're moving to a cryptographically agile new way of doing and thinking. So that all that cryptography, which is needles in a haystack, they're all now glowing because they're up for grabs over the next few years. We're going to take a look at all those and modernize all of that behind the scenes, under the hood. And that's what I'm most excited about. Is this undertaking, by the way, is the single largest cybersecurity uplift in history, in human history. AI is dwarfing that from its complexity, no doubt. But cryptography, which is the underpinning of everything cybersecurity, we're modernizing that right now. And I'm really, really excited about some of the advancements we've seen. So don't get me started on quantum and all that cool stuff and qubits, but guys, pay attention. It's fun.
I want to
Very
get you
cool.
started.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, Leonard, go ahead and lead us in. What do you got?
Well, you gentlemen know I was a Marine for 23 years. I never had a choice than to be optimistic about things in life.
Right.
I actually am very optimistic to a large extent because, the good guys get a vote too, right?
Yep.
We have access to some of the same AI technology as the bad actors.
Right.
And I'm really excited about, as Blair mentioned, some of the advancements that we're seeing across AI-enabled security platforms that allow for orchestration, automation, everything supporting security operations to the fundamental things that we need to get done, like gaining asset visibility for one, right? And doing things like continuous monitoring, exposure management. But what I'm really optimistic about is I think our greatest strength has been and continues to be our people, our processes, and our procedures. What's different now is we're facing a real compressed decision cycle, right?
Right.
Yep. Yep.
But what we're finding real value in is augmenting our people with the right tools that they need to identify threats faster, accelerate decision making. Blair, you mentioned automate repetitive tasks and correlate what used to be just a huge amount of data. So now this is helping us really get to the point of prioritizing those actions that need to take place, incident response. So despite all the numerous changes that we're seeing, and these are significant, I think the best approach is stay grounded in our mission, right? And for SDCOE, that's about protecting our staff and our students and their information from digital harm. Those fundamental premises, that knowing the threat, knowing your team's capabilities and limitations are also key. But we're in a position now where we have to, I would say, embrace, but also optimize every tool that's out there, everything that's available to us. But in my mind, the focus should always be on how does that integrate into our people, our processes, and our procedures, and how do we strengthen those organizational capabilities?
Can
Precisely.
I just add to you what you just said, Leonard?
Yeah.
Gary, bear with me. I have to commend you for something very obvious to me, maybe not to you, is your discipline in this approach. I assume that your military Marine background, mission oriented, this is not a democracy. Wiggle room is a bad. I'm very, very curious of how you found yourself moving from that realm into the educational realm. But what I hear from you is that you have a plan, and that you have discipline, and you have prioritization, and you have all these things. And I would honestly say that is sorely lacking in many large enterprises, or even small to medium, that think, that's somebody else's problem, or I don't get paid enough, or somebody will take care of it for me. So I was curious about what you, sorry to jump in there, Gary, but I'm watching a Marine talk about educational back ends, and it's astounding to me, because I would love to be in a room with you when you explain to everybody, we're not thinking about this, we're doing this.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a team effort for sure. But I will
Right.
say that from my perspective, there's a lot of similarities between what I did in the Marine Corps and what I
Yeah.
do to support K-12 education. And the analogy I'd make, and Gary knows this to a large extent, Marine Corps is all about supporting the tip of the spear, that rifleman that's out in the field. In K-12, it's about supporting that teacher in the classroom, that
Wow.
student in the classroom. So,
Which can be just as hostile, by the way.
right. So,
Sorely lacking ammunition some days, I'm told.
yeah. So I think for me, that's how I was able to make that adjustment. But it's
Yeah.
a similar mission. It's
Yeah.
about mission accomplishment. It's about knowing your people and best employing them in support of the cybersecurity requirements.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I have to admit, it's been interesting because I mean, from an optimistic point of view, I mean, in 2013, I was part of a group that IEEE asked us to go before Congress, and we were talking about AI, to a group of congressmen and stuff like that. And at the time, they were wondering, hey, should we go ahead and block this and ban this technology because it's going to be evil and and it's going to really do a lot of damage. And at the time, we were trying to explain to them that you know, AI is like any technology; it's a two-edged sword.
Yep.
There's good and there's bad. It just
Mm.
depends on your approach and how you're going to deal with it and everything. And that you shouldn't just go ahead and put policy and laws in place without really understanding how you're going to use it. And it's still maturing. We don't even know where it's going to go. This was back in 2013. In 2021, I was despairing and I was not optimistic. And that was because at that time we were seeing the explosion of AI and all these new
Mm.
technologies. Everything was moving fast,
Hmm.
but there was no security. There
Too
was no,
fast. Yeah.
I'm like, we're being told to deploy it in the company. We're being told to go ahead and do so. And I
Right.
got nothing in my security stack to give me
Right.
visibility to help me manage, what was just, blowing up, for us. Um, Fast forward 5 years, and I work at a company that does this, that had just started, that was just a baby startup at the time in 2021 and is now, a mature company. Um, and, I'm very optimistic about it now. You look at the threats and how things are fast moving and just the machine speed and how things are being done. But at the same time, as you said, the good guys have a say. And we're
Hmm.
seeing that now, just the amazing amount of companies that are now stepping into space,
Yeah.
from a security side of it, and not just from a security side of it, from a risk management side of it, from a governance side of it, and more of that's going to mature. and even the larger, companies now are implementing it. And yeah, there's a lot of acquisitions. They're pulling things in and adding them to their portfolio
Hmm.
of services.
Hmm.
Um, and what I find, is that even in security programs now that are implementing it, that are using agents and that are using automation for stuff, there wasn't any frameworks, and now there's multiple frameworks
Hmm.
about how to go ahead and do this. And even OWASP now has multiple, different, policies that you can look at now for everything from LLMs to agents to, the applications. And so you're understanding a lot of the risks that you're dealing with. There's just so much more
Right.
that is now available for those of us that are fighting the fight.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out how we can help our organizations do this safely,
Hmm.
as they move forward. And so, yeah, I'm very optimistic about it. But I think, from a realism standpoint, you got to understand, just as the bad guys are doing it and we're doing it, and at times we feel like, we're playing catch up as they come up with things, if they come up with new threats and they come up with new ways in which they're going to do business. It's interesting. A lot of these things drive, new innovations.
Yeah.
They
Right.
drive new things that all of a sudden new companies, and they drive new different ways in which technologies can be used. And so that's what I'm optimistic about. And I'm definitely optimistic that, especially here in the United States, we are very quick to catch on that and to go ahead and build, woohoo, a new mousetrap, and to build something
Yep.
new that we can go ahead and do. So, I mean, and being, and having worked for 6 years, in the private equity space up in the Bay Area, I saw tons of that,
Yeah.
and it's just continuing to grow. Um, and I think that kind of leads into, the third question I want to ask. If I pull it back down to here in San Diego and here in our region, I really would like your gentleman's input on, if we think about businesses here in our region today, what can they do to better equip themselves for the evolving landscape around them, for what they're seeing, with respect to AI and respect to even the post-quantum future. I
Mm.
mean, what do you think that they can do, to better help themselves deal with these type of risks that they're going to be seeing? I'll go ahead and I'll start with you, Leonard.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of briefly talked about this yesterday, and it's a really great question. And for me, I think it comes down to, we talked about continuous improvement, right?
Mhm.
AI is no doubt driving change in every domain, from biotech, science, medicine, engineering, across the board, right? The field is changing so rapidly. But like we also talked about in cybersecurity, there are new threats, with attacks being executed now autonomously and at rapid speed. And attackers are combining new tactics, techniques, and procedures along with tried and tested tactics, techniques, and procedures, all for the point of finding gaps and weaknesses to exploit them before we even become aware. But what hasn't changed in all of that is the need for fundamental cyber hygiene. And Gary, you mentioned frameworks. It's about prioritizing and starting with the basics first. I'll put a plug out there for us in K-12. Many of us reference the CIS Critical Security Controls Framework from the Center for Internet Security and MSISAC, the Multi-State Information Sharing Analysis Center. There's about 56 safeguards just in that first prioritized group, that are specific and practical for any organization to implement. The NIST cybersecurity framework, that's another great starting point. But I would say build on the fundamentals, in training, education, and awareness, your vendor partnerships, support from other regional resources, such as the San Diego Cyber Center of Excellence, and then basic hygiene. Uh, you got to do all of that while you're planning, because you don't have a choice, while you're planning to integrate new governance, new security controls, and the technology surrounding AI and PKC.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick. I mean, what you were talking about, I definitely, the Center for Internet Security, CIS, you look at their 18 controls, and we used to say the first 10 was the hygiene. If you're any business that's connected to the internet, you got to have those 10 dialed in, and you got to have the discipline that you're actually managing them. And the biggest thing I've talked to boards and I've talked to executive teams about is that, cyber is not something that's a one-off. You go ahead and you spend for it, you put it in place, and then, okay, you move on to the next thing. No, it's something that you've got to manage. It's
Mm.
something you've got to manage continuously, and because the first time that you blow it off, the first time that, yeah, you just don't bother to go ahead and do updates, or you don't bother to go ahead and renew your licensing for your EDR or whatever, is the first time you get bit, the first time you have an incident, the first time you lose that critical database. So the first thing, you know what I'm saying? And it's one of those things that, I kind of explain to companies is that, yes, your CFO may not like it because it feels like it's a sunk cost because it's not really, hey, it's not generating revenue. But I look at it as that, no, it may be a cost, but it's a cost that allows you to go get revenue safely. It allows you to grow. It allows you to take care of your customers. And you've really got to go ahead and have the discipline and, and to be able to go ahead and continuously do that. And even if you have a small team, or even if you use an MSP, a managed service provider that's doing it for you, you should have this in place. You should be aware of it. You should be thinking of, okay, these are the services that we're using. And then if you don't have those services, like you have a very bad day, something happens, what does that look like? How are you going to operate? How are you still going to be able to protect yourselves? So yeah, it's something that I definitely think, for businesses here in the region, these basic controls will take you a long way. And sorry, Blair, I didn't mean to
No, no,
jump in
this
there
is
real quick.
wonderful.
So I'll let you jump in now.
I'm echoing. Leonard took the words out of my mouth. Hygiene. This is one of our, I guess, fiduciary roles here as practitioners. Is we got to teach those, that are coming up through the ranks, and no different than military or government or enterprise. One of the things I encourage is be curious, and I know that's easy to say that. Like, what does that mean? Well, for example, a lot of us hear about AI, but do we spend the time actually, drilling down and educating ourselves? We're continually educating ourselves. I jokingly say that every 5 years is a degree in something. So, maybe I've got 7 degrees in cyber so far and counting. You never stop learning. And what I'm excited about is that this concept of AI is not lost on anyone, but there's perceptions to what that means. But where I sit within the post-quantum cryptography is we're moving into another echelon of compute. This is happening within the next few years. It's already here-ish, but we don't have quantum computing running our enterprises like a mainframe is still today, or our generic enterprise infrastructure. What I'm saying is that with the advent of quantum compute, I'll give an example where quantum compute platforms like IBM and Google and all the world's best are coming together, and they're building this next generation of device, systems 1 and systems 2, if you're an IBM quantum enthusiast. But think about that they're now able to take those quantum compute platforms, run AI to improve on MRI technologies. There's 3 acronyms in there if you weren't paying attention. So you've got, so much going on behind the scenes, but this criticality is there's nothing that I think the world wants more is to solve the biggest problems and challenges. And I think you mentioned, Leonard, like healthcare to me and the health sciences is absolutely the most critical thing, I think, for more. I'm less enthusiastic about, as I said, about the stock market and making trades better and more efficient. You know what I mean? Like, is that a
Yeah.
necessity or is that a want? Whereas healthcare. So I'm watching this and saying what I recommend is get curious, understand that hygiene and discipline matters, and that this is probably the first time in most organizations' history that crypto hygiene or cyber hygiene is going to be crucial, not only moving forward, but for the rest of time. It'll now require that you're now going to have cryptographic posture management, cryptographic intelligence. That didn't matter to all of us before. It was just behind the scenes, underneath the hood. Nobody cared what that wire did to that wire. Who cares? Now you need to know that all that cryptography is going to be upgraded. And so my recommendation is, if you've got a pivot in your career or you've got a pivot in your thinking, start now. If you haven't already done so, AI is great, but get really dangerous, and it's really easy to find stuff on quantum. Trust me. I'm probably half the problem creating the content myself and others do. But there's wonderful stuff that you can learn online free of charge. And if I didn't already make this clear, if you're not using Gemini or any type of agentic AI, Gary, tell me your favorites. Tell me that isn't the best thing for you to say, show me the top 20 things I should be concerned about, whether it's right or wrong or otherwise. At least it gives you a refined list of things to start, as opposed to just go to the web and start searching. Nobody does that anymore, right? We're all going to be going to some type of agentic support underneath to find things and also categorize them into consumable information, because that's the problem. There's too much information. I only have so many hours in the day. How do I get something that I can geek out on for an hour a
Yeah.
week? Something like that.
Yeah.
And honestly, that rolls right into the next question around career advice for professionals, that are here and that are in the cyber, community. What would be some advice that you would give to them to be able to enter or stay relevant in today's cyber workforce? And I think, just as you were highlighting, and I've said this multiple times, the continuous education piece. I mean, I'm already, talking with college students now that,
Right.
if you're not building things with Claude or with ChatGPT or with Copilot
Right.
or Gemini, you know, you should already know how to be able to do Python or some type of scripting language.
Right.
You
Right.
probably already should have an account in GitHub where you're building projects. You need to be doing this stuff and be comfortable with these tools, because if you're joining a security team, a security, program, if you're being brought into security projects, there's going to be some type of AI component now.
Yeah.
It's just you're seeing it in job recs that are coming on and people that are being
Right.
hiring. Everything's shifting. I mean, my
Gary, you
son,
said it. Gary,
yeah,
can I interrupt you for a second? You said it yesterday that this pivot at the front end is a lot of that low hanging stuff is being automated and taken away from the generic cybersecurity expert. We don't,
yep.
those entry level positions and those call, not call centers.
SOC
Sorry,
and
yeah, your stocks.
threat hunting and
Well,
stuff
I
like
was
that.
going to
Yeah.
say you nailed it yesterday and said that's shifted already. So that
Yep.
skill set is being taken up by AI.
Yep.
So now it's going to be, what about all the other stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, much of that is much of the low, I guess you could say the low hanging fruit, or kind of the the entry level stuff that people were coming into cyber for. That's the automation piece. Just like what Leonard was talking about, we're automating so many things.
Right.
Many of those things are now being automated. So for teams to be able to focus on more of the mid and higher level stuff that's required to be able to run security programs, what that means for professionals, in the field right now, and for college students that are hoping to become, a cybersecurity workforce professional, it means that you need to up your game.
Right.
It means
Yeah.
that you need to go
I
ahead
was
and
just going to say,
yeah,
yeah, not to interrupt you, but yeah, there's an expectation, right? That you're coming into the game with a higher level of effectiveness,
Right.
higher level of efficacy, because you have these other tools to your availability
Right
to
on.
now use and leverage. Yeah, right.
yeah. And the thing about it is these tools are free. I mean, the courses that
Mhm.
that Anthropic has for Claude, they're all free and they're really good and they're really in depth. And,
Yeah.
and the thing about Google has them for Gemini, OpenAI has them for ChatGPT. Microsoft has them for for Copilot. That's what I'm saying, is that there's no excuse that I can't find them. Are you kidding me? You can search for it and get like a list of
Right.
classes. It's incredible. And then even like Harvard and MIT and many of them are now, putting out, free classes as well to get you started. And the biggest thing is that, this is not something that's going away. This is a fundamental shift in the technologies and the way that businesses are operating today and how we operate with them inside the business. We're going to have to go ahead and shift and go ahead and add these to our toolbox. These are just new tools that we just need to go ahead and learn, and we're going to need them.
That's right. I was going to
Yeah.
say one more thing too that affects me and others in my age category is sometimes you got to let go of some of the old, and you've got to shift your mindset. Case in point with data scientists that we probably don't even know where they are in the organization, but when you find them and you understand what they do, what we would have traditionally looked at as a problem, they've already solved. So what
Yeah.
we have to kind of look at is what are the areas that have already been checked off? The box is checked. That's done. Like we're not spending time on those problems anymore. But as you look, you say, well, what about antivirus? What about malware protection? What about those are examples of that's advanced persistent threat. That's all now handled over here. And Leonard, I'm telling him like he doesn't already know this, but But a lot of us have to shake that and move and focus on what's at hand, because that's the bulk of what the effort's going to
Yeah.
be. Is I want to embrace AI for all the right reasons, but I want that careful thought, critical thinking, and also us old guys. We did that before and it blew up in our face, right? We tried that and ooh boy, did that ever sting. We had to go back and fix those so now we're more mindful. We're much more so. Our guidance for the, I say, younger generation is, yeah, maybe we're a little old to know some of the. You mentioned Python. What if we're COBOL or we're Pascal guys? You know, a lot of us have learned to let that stuff go and shift right into the now. And I think the combination of our a wonderful, we've got now 50 years in this industry that we can share amongst ourselves. That's really helpful to building that future. I really truly understand that now more in my early 60s than I did in my 20s or 30s when I started off as a semantic guy in the antivirus space in 1989. Things have really changed. So
Oh yeah.
embrace the change, right? All of us know what change
Yeah.
looks like.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leonard.
No, no, go ahead, Gary, please.
I was just saying, honestly, this has been a great discussion. And I think, to go ahead and close it out, I'll start with you, Leonard, and then go ahead and roll over to Blair. What are some key takeaways or some call to actions that you would like to leave our audience to help them stay resilient and also to tap into the resources that we have in the community around here?
Okay, I'm gonna kind of interweave some of the response to the last question into the response to this question because I heard some key takeaways and Blair mentioned it, and we know this. uh, this reference to the old core and the new core,
Yeah.
right? The old core
Right.
knows that in cybersecurity, that's one of the few professions where you just never quite arrive. You just learning never stops.
Right.
Mastery is never achieved. And
Yep.
so I think for some of us who have come up through the pipeline, we've always recognized that like I got to continuously stay fresh. So the real question is, how do you prepare for today and stay relevant for the future? The other thing I want to mention is this is a really an area that's near and dear to SDCOE. Our North Star goal is about reducing poverty and increasing belonging through education. We've been able to make a real difference through our IT and our cybersecurity internship programs, along with some week-long cybersecurity boot camps that my colleague Danny passed along. Shout out to him that has been able to help set up. We put through more than 120 students, and these are students primarily from our District 1. Many of them are foster youth or unhoused and have faced some really tough challenges. So they've been able to learn technical skills, but this is the message for everyone. It's more importantly, I think, those transferable skills or traits, qualities, and values that we talked about early on: the teamwork, communication skills, problem solving, attention to detail, curiosity, and that relentless pursuit of improvement. So I just want to emphasize what you said, Blair. Build
Perfect.
that strong foundation, but be lifelong learners.
Yeah.
Um, don't waste time and go and build your expertise in new technologies because they're already here. Um,
Love it.
and then I touched on this earlier. Don't forget, you don't have to know it all. Cybersecurity is a team sport. Success depends on your partnerships, your leadership, the culture, your planning, your preparedness, along with your readiness. So go back and build the force, deputize everyone you know in cybersecurity responsibilities. Preparation is key. And what you do today will determine your success for tomorrow. So we're fortunate here in San Diego that we have this incredible cybersecurity ecosystem doing things like we're doing today, discussions across private industry, education, our defense sector. I think we're strongest when we collaborate and when we share information and we learn from another.
Definitely. Blair, you want to add to that?
That was superbly profound, Leonard. I could listen to your story. I couldn't echo better. I think you've said it. You've encapsulated all of it into a very meaningful comments. Stay curious, be curious, and also I often recommend to people to say, what am I going to try and accomplish this week? And what am I going to, I know that that sounds a bit trite, but it really is just going with the flow and just business as usual is not going to get this solved. Those that show the initiative and strive for greatness or whatever it is in your vernacular that you like to embrace. I'm a big believer, like you said, Leonard and Gary, you have shown with all your experience, and you listen to hundreds of vendors and companies and so on, is you take in from an introspect what you learn along the way and share that with others. The team sport thing isn't lost on anyone here. Otherwise, football will be a one-person sport, and a quarterback can't throw to himself in the end zone. I mean, whatever. I'm a hockey guy. It's real hard to play that game without a team that's behind it. And so I'm always thinking, how do I work with those amongst me and around me, and choose wisely. But like I said, be curious, remain curious. That's my best advice.
Very good. Well, I'm going to go ahead and bring this to a close. Many thanks to Blair and Leonard. This has been a great discussion. We invite businesses and job seekers to visit CCOE's website at sdccoe.org for more information and free resources, including the San Diego Cyber Clinic and the Regional Cyber Lab. Thank you for joining us today, and stay tuned for the San Diego Business Journal's next Cyber Trends panel in November. Thank you very much. You guys have a great week.